So now let's have a look at the D16 and determine the theme. So what is the D16 all about? The D16 governs our inner foundation and our ability to navigate through ebbs and flows of life. Just like the waves of the ocean, our life is also filled with ups and downs, and how we respond to those challenges, that is indicated by the D16. So her Lagna Lord Jupiter is in the 9th house, which is one of the auspicious houses. So this shows that she finds emotional strength and inner peace through 9th house matters, right? Which is her higher knowledge, right? It is her belief system, spirituality, and also her mentors that guide her when she is going through some tough moments. And of course, Jupiter here also gives her the wisdom, so she can be joyful and hopeful and optimistic. Now, Jupiter is also here conjunct D6 and 12 houses as well. And of course we know the 6th house rules disease, death, and opponents. And so there's one side of her that seems to be completely calm, when facing challenges day after day. The 12th house rules hospitals. And even when she's laid up in hospital and isolated for a day or two, due to some illness, she finds a way to draw from her inner strength and remain positive during those times. And it is this Jupiter here that gives her some inner peace, some relief, and also helps her find higher meaning during those difficult times. So now let's also look at the other important factors. So here we got the 4th Lord Venus. Now Venus is also the Karaka of the D16, and it is here placed in the auspicious 10th house, but it is also debilitated. And so this Venus is going to disrupt her inner peace and cause ups and downs in her inner world. And Venus rules the 10th house of power and authority, and it's also placed in the 10th house of work. And so this Venus here connects her inner well-being to her work, and it is debilitated. So this is going to make it very difficult for her to maintain her emotional poise, at work. In fact, this Venus has a very hard time maintaining harmonious relationships at work, right? Most of her employees dislike her, and so there's this constant tension at work that affects her emotionally, to the point that every once in a while she has to take a leave from work and to recover in the hospital. And even when she has a great business day, she reached all of her goals, she can't really sort of enjoy or celebrate those moments or days, right? She cannot just take, let's say, half a day off and say, hey, I'm going to treat myself with a nice meal. The last days and weeks were quite hard. And now finally, the project is finished and it was a success. And so now let me treat myself with a nice meal or maybe some nice clothes or whatever. And she's not able to do so. In fact, in her mind, she's already focused on the next task, or dealing with the tensions at work or some employee that causes trouble. And so she can neither enjoy and relax when it's time to do so, nor is she able to handle emotionally her job well. The other important inner Varga is the D20, and it focuses on our spiritual practices that lead to our inner growth and transformation. It reveals our dedication to our spiritual path and the support that we get, but also the challenges that we encounter along the way. And so how does she relate to this part of her life? With the Lagna Lord Venus in the 7th house of the public, this shows that her spiritual path is connected to her ability to create and share beautiful things with others. Okay, so here the Venusian qualities of beauty, art, and harmony get connected to the people under the, we could say, umbrella of the D20, which is her devotion. And so this means that she sees her beautiful creations as vehicles of her spiritual expression. And so for her, her work is not just a job, but it is a sacred act of devotion where she can, blend her creativity with her spiritual purpose. She considers her art to be a form of offering, right? Where each product, each garment, each cultural artifact carries her devotion and dedication to uplift others. And this is really the ultimate desire of Venus here in the 7th house, right? And that is to spread love and peace and to make the world a more beautiful place. The important 8th lord is Jupiter, and it is placed in the 5th house, which is another auspicious house. And Jupiter is also the Karaka of the D20. So this is the first Varga where all 3 factors are in auspicious houses and they are not debilitated. Previously, if you remember, in the D16, the important key factors, Jupiter and Venus, they were also in auspicious houses, but Venus is debilitated, okay? But here in the D20, all the 3 factors are in auspicious houses and not debilitated. So this is basically her best Varga so far when it comes to the support, fulfillment, and harmony that it offers. And so this means that it's really easy for her to feel connected to something greater through her work, right? She feels that her devotion can just flow effortlessly through her creativity. She just loves this aspect, this part of her work and ultimately her life, that when she is creative, right? When she can withdraw, when she can design, and all the other aspects that have to do with the creative process. The 3rd inner Varga is the D24, which focuses on learning and intellectual growth. So let's determine the theme and see how she experiences this part of her life. The Lagna Lord is Jupiter and it is placed in the 11th house. So this is usually always a great placement for any planet. But Jupiter is debilitated. So right away, this tells us that she struggles to come to a greater understanding and take advantage of what teachers have to offer. There's a sense that no matter how much time she spends in reading about something, learning something, even hiring teachers and mentors, in the end she might not understand much anyway. Now luckily, the 12th lord, Saturn, is placed in the auspicious 10th house. And not only that, Saturn here also becomes a manifester. Right, so despite her intellectual challenges, luckily the 12th lord, Saturn, is in the auspicious 10th house. If you remember, any planet in the 10th house becomes a manifester, and here of learning opportunities. And Saturn is also in Sagittarius, which is of course the sign of self-development. And so despite her intellectual challenges, she tries really hard to make sense of everything that happened to her. She wants to learn from her mistakes and do better next time. And so it is this Saturn here that provides for learning opportunities that allow her to deepen her understanding about herself, about how to be a better leader, how to create a more harmonious work environment, and also how to select a more competent and trustworthy business partner. The Karaka of the D24 is Mercury, who is placed in the 6th house at Adhisthana. And so this shows that her learning progress is slow and delayed, and she has a lot of doubts about her intellectual ability. And she also faces, we could say, intellectual opposition, right? People criticize her that, how she could not have noticed all the red flags of, her previous business partner. And so she's also judging herself really for not being smart enough and having allowed this person to practically ruin her life. And so we can see that the only good planet in the D24 when it comes to the overall theme of this part of her life is Saturn. Saturn is here in the 10th house, and it is also a manifestor of learning ability and intellectual growth. However, it is Saturn. And this indicates that yes, she is able to make learning progress, but it is going to be slow and only earned after having passed some really painful lessons. The D27 highlights our strengths and abilities, and how we experience this part of our life is shown by the theme. So now let's start with Mars, who is the Karaka of the D27. Mars is in the Lagna, and this shows that her abilities and her strength are really an inherent part of her life, right? And so she really has so much energy and drive in whatever that she does, right? And this is all here due to this Mars, right? Mars makes her fearless and ready to tackle any challenge. And even when she's down and out, when she regains her strength and comes back to work, she is practically unstoppable, right? So this Mars here gives her so much energy, courage, and determination to achieve, whatever it is that she's doing. The Lagna Lord is Jupiter, and it is placed in the 3rd house, which is the important house in the D27. And so this shows that her path and identity is supportive of honing her skills. And Jupiter particularly is going to expand her skill set and give her great happiness and meaning in creatively expressing herself. The important 3rd Lord is Saturn, and it is placed in the 10th house, and this shows that she's very disciplined in the pursuit of mastering her craft. And particularly here in the 10th house, this shows that her discipline and dedication will eventually bring her significant respect and professional achievements, right? Saturn here in the 10th house is a manifestor and creates a professional platform where she can showcase her talent.